Hello everybody and welcome back to the Not Applicable Formula 1 channel. I hope that you're well and I hope you're ready to talk about Mick Schumacher because the German Formula 1 driver is off of the grid for 2023, sort of. He's kind of in the background at Mercedes, lost his seat at Haas, but it seems like the move to AlphaTauri that was speculated throughout the 2022 season was actually a lot closer than we first thought. Franz Tost came out recently and said that he would have quite liked Mick Schumacher to be part of the AlphaTauri team for 2023, and I think that move could still be on the cards, obviously not for the 2023 season, but possibly for the 2024 season. So let's kind of delve into it a little bit, talk about Mick Schumacher and whether or not I can see him returning to the grid for the 2024 season, possibly with the AlphaTauri team. First and foremost, I think we have to talk about Mick Schumacher leaving Haas and whether or not that was the right decision. Obviously, Gunther Steiner had his say. He said Mick did a good job, but we need a driver to carry us forward, and why they went for Nico Hülkenberg rather than Mick Schumacher. And basically, all they've done is gone for a steadier driver, right? The only reason that Mick Schumacher was gotten rid of at Haas is because they needed to make sure that they could financially keep hold of the team, and the crashes that Mick Schumacher had, plus the fact that he wasn't the quickest driver on the grid every single time around, there just basically wasn't the consistency there with Mick Schumacher. He had too many peaks and troughs, whereas they just want a driver that is just very much in the middle. I think with Nico Hülkenberg, what you get is a very safe pair of hands, but a very boring driver. So I personally, if I was Haas, would have kept hold of Mick Schumacher. I think that his prospectus going forward, the fact that he is one of those drivers that can still offer a little bit more, is better than having Nico Hülkenberg that just kind of drives the car around the track and maybe gets some points out of it occasionally. Although all of that is kind of a little bit irrelevant now for Mick Schumacher. He has been dropped by Haas. We know that Nico Hülkenberg is coming in, and we know that he's taken a reserve driver role at Mercedes for 2023 behind Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. And I actually really like this move for Mick Schumacher. I think this is much better than him trying to, maybe go to a different series, try and keep racing somewhere, and then try and come back onto the Formula 1 grid at a later date. I think we've seen, unless you're Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, like a previous world champion, it's very difficult to go away from Formula 1, especially for a season or two, and then come back again with a team and try and get yourself back onto the Formula 1 grid and build that name for yourself again. So I think just keeping himself in the peripheries, keeping himself with the Mercedes team, he's going to get to do some testing, possibly a free practice session here and there. He'll still be at the Grand Prix. I think it's much better for him in the long term trying to get a seat back on the Formula 1 grid, which is why I want to talk about Mick Schumacher's prospects coming into the 2024 season. He wants to get back on the grid as soon as he possibly can. And when we sort of go back 6 months, we were talking about Mick Schumacher leaving Haas. There was speculation around him possibly going to the Alpine seat. There was speculation around him joining AlphaTauri or even Williams at the time, where all of those teams were looking for drivers to pick up for the 2023 season. Now, unfortunately, it hasn't been the case that he's been able to pick up any of those seats, but it seems like the 2023 seat AlphaTauri was much closer than we first thought. Franz Tost has revealed that Mick Schumacher was on AlphaTauri's radar for the 2023 seat prior to the Red Bull affiliated team signing Nick de Vries. And obviously, Nick de Vries kind of came into it because of that Monza Grand Prix, right? I think Alex Albon missing out on that Monza Grand Prix has basically made Nick de Vries' Formula 1 career happen at this point. He picked up points in that Williams, and then suddenly everybody wanted Nick de Vries. It went from, oh, is Mick Schumacher going to possibly end up here, to everybody pivoting and thinking about Nick de Vries. It was then Nick de Vries to Alpine, Nick de Vries to Williams, Nick de Vries to AlphaTauri, and AlphaTauri finally managed to sign Nick de Vries for the 2023 season. But prior to that Williams drive from Nick de Vries, it looked like IndyCar star Colton Herta was going to be the one to replace Pierre Gasly at AlphaTauri. It looked like it was basically done. Colton Herta was going to come in until the FIA stepped in and said, hang on, he doesn't have enough super license points. He's not going to be able to get enough super license points in IndyCar. He was talking about possibly doing other series to get super license points there. The FIA kind of stepped in and stopped that from happening. So Colton Herta was no longer an option, and it looks like Mick Schumacher might have been the next best thing, which is basically what Franz Tost has said. He basically said that he would have liked to have seen Mick Schumacher in the car and convinced that Mick Schumacher is talented enough that he also has what it takes to be successful in Formula 1. So why didn't it happen? It seems to be for political reasons. As ever in Formula 1, there's also something going on behind the scenes. And because Schumacher at the time was a Ferrari junior, it seems like all of the talks with Mick Schumacher kind of broke down, which might link to why Mick Schumacher has left the Ferrari Driver Academy. In and amongst the silly season, lots of drivers changing places. Mick Schumacher also announced that he was going to be leaving the Ferrari Academy, an academy that he's been part of for so long, and an academy that has managed to get him all the way up into Formula 1. And I think it kind of links together. Helmut Marko was even quoted as saying, he's not one of us, he's a Ferrari junior, and that's why we've never done business with him. We have our own program, can. We prefer our own people. And that might have been the case, right? Ferrari were possibly standing in the way of him signing a contract with AlphaTauri and therefore with Red Bull as well, because he was part of that junior academy. He's never going to really replace Charles Leclerc. He's not going to get in front of Carlos Sainz anytime soon. He wanted that seat at AlphaTauri, but then that also meant signing a contract with Red Bull, and Ferrari would have not wanted that considering they were championship rivals. So AlphaTauri have now missed out on Colton Herta, they've missed out on Mick Schumacher, and maybe that's when they decide to go for Nick de Vries for the 2023 season alongside Yuki Tsunoda, and that is going to be their combination coming into this year. Although even though they've decided on those two, AlphaTauri have gone short term on both. In fact, Nick de Vries and Yuki Tsunoda both only have 1 year contracts with the team. Nick de Vries coming in, 27-year-old, winning World Karting Champion, Formula Renault, Formula 2, Formula E. Even with all of that, AlphaTauri have only offered him a 1 year contract. So they clearly don't see him as like the future of the Formula 1 team. And they're still a little bit 50-50 on whether or not he'll be able to deliver. And Yuki Tsunoda coming into his 3rd year of the team. 2021 was pretty terrible for the Japanese driver. 2022 was much better, but now that Pierre Gasly is gone, Yuki Tsunoda is going to be expected to step up. And if he is outperformed by rookie Nick de Vries, even though Nick de Vries is much older than Yuki Tsunoda, I think Yuki Tsunoda is still in a pretty poor place and will be replaced next season. Possibly could have even been replaced this season had Pierre Gasly not gone and had there been, another Red Bull Junior that was showing maybe a little bit more in Formula 2. So Mick to AlphaTauri for the 2024 season, I genuinely feel like could be a really good move for the team. I think Mick Schumacher will learn a lot at Mercedes. He's been part of the Ferrari Junior Academy, so has learned a lot from Ferrari. He has got Formula 1 experience with Haas. 2021, does that really count because the Haas car was so bad? No. But in 2022, we saw those glimpses of Mick Schumacher being really, really impressive in that Haas car. Would AlphaTauri go for Mick Schumacher in 2024, say that Nick de Vries or Yuki Tsunoda doesn't live up to the expectations, or do they go back to Colton Herta, who they were linked so heavily with in 2022? Having said that, maybe Mick Schumacher doesn't want to go to AlphaTauri anymore. Maybe he's got eyes on the Sauber team. Obviously, 2026, Audi coming in, German driver, German team. Couple of years at Sauber before Audi come in. That would also be a very good move for Mick Schumacher, I feel. I'd love to know what you think Mick Schumacher's career has in store over the next couple of years in the comments down below. Whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you next time.